Alright guys, my second try. This is all I got. 9.9-5 part 2. We've already learned how to solve quadratic equations by completing a square. But we didn't have any examples where we had to divide the entire equation by the leading coefficient. So some of the problems on today's worksheet, you will have to do that. So this is the first step. We're going to practice solving equations that require us to do this step. The other steps are the same. We get the constant on one side and all the other terms on the other side. We're going to turn one side into a perfect square trinomial, and we're going to do that by adding this b over 2 squared. I've been calling that k. Then we're going to factor that perfect square trinomial. And after that, we're going to solve by taking the square root, which we've done before. One of the things kids forget a lot is to take the positive and negative and make two equations, so don't forget to do that. And last but not least, we're going to solve for x. Okay, so what is a leading coefficient? So these look different than the ones that we solved earlier because they have a coefficient other than 1 on the quadratic or squared term. So the leading coefficient here is 6. The leading coefficient here is 2. So we're going to divide this entire equation. That is the one step we didn't have to do. We're going to divide by the leading coefficient. Take that same equation, and we're going to divide it by the leading coefficient. When we do, we are left with n squared plus 1.5n equals 2. So we want to give ourselves some room. So what we need to do is we need to take these terms and add something to it that will make this a perfect square trinomial. So this is the n squared plus 1.5n on the left side and the 2 on the right. So what do we need to add there? So that is the question. So we're going to use the k, the b over 2 squared. Our b is 1.5. We plug into that formula. Then the number we're going to add to both sides is 0.56. Alright, and when we do, this is what we're going to want. When we do, this is what we wind up with, right? Maybe I left out a step. Yeah, I think I left out a step. So the step here, we'll put it to the right, left rather, is n squared plus 1.5n plus 0.56 equals 2.56. Now, this is a perfect square trinomial. So if we're factoring this, we take, it's going to factor into a binomial. So it's always going to be the square root of the first term, the square of the last term, and whatever this operation is. So the square of the first term is n, the square root is 0.56, rounds to 0.75, and that is squared. A little wonky here. So now we can take the square root of both sides to solve. So if we take the square root of the left side, gives n plus 0.75. We take the square root of the right side, it's 1.6. Okay? So now we're going to just solve the equation. We're going to subtract 0.75 from both sides. Well, I thought this would make it easier. Maybe not. And so one of our solutions is 0.85. do the same thing with a negative 1.6. So here was n plus 0.75 equals 1.6. Now n plus 0.75 equals negative 1.6. Add subtract 0.75 from both sides. And so our two solutions, written in set notation, would be negative 2.35 and 0.85. Let me do one more example. So 2t squared minus 4t equals 1. It has a coefficient other than 1 here, so we're going to divide by that. That's also called the leading coefficient. And we divide by that. We come up with 2t squared minus 2t equals 0.5. I turned the fraction to a decimal. Now we've got to figure out what we need to add to both sides to make this side a perfect square trinomial. And so we're going to use our b, which is negative 2. I'm going to use our formula for k. We find that k is 1. So we add 1 to both sides. And when we do, we get t squared minus 2t plus 1 equals 1.5. So we are going to factor this perfect square trinomial. So the square root of t squared is t. It's a minus because that first operation was minus. And the square root of 1 is 1. So that is squared. And it equals our constant. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And when we do, we have t minus 1 equals positive and negative 1.22. We got this by putting this into the calculator, so 1.5 and hitting the square root button, and that's going to round to 1.22. Now we need to separate into our two equations. Equals 1.22 and equals negative 1.22. Add 1 to both sides to solve on this equation. And one of our solutions is 2.22. We add 1 on both sides to solve this equation. The solution is negative 0.22. So if we write that in set notation, those are our solutions. Okay, you can start working on your worksheet now.